So, nothing technical growing up at all. So and I can tell, I could hear all the old timers talking about all these different chip architectures and different mainframes or different, Spark systems. And I kind of know the history of it, of course, and I understand at a theoretical level what the differences are, but I never actually lived it in a sense of working on it. So, and that's so I always appreciate those guys that do it. But I said, I was just the guy who went fishing and threw a rubber baseball against the wall and caught it.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting that you haven't or didn't have access to a computer growing up, but you're still terribly interested in technology and you use it regularly in your day-to-day life now. Most people in that setting probably wouldn't have taken to technology. I know people my age that don't like computers, even though they are forced to work with it. So it's very impressive, actually. Oh. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thanks.
I'm trying to give you a compliment.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it is. I guess I'm genuinely interested in understanding how working, and the engineers that we work with, that I worked with at I2C Data, that I work with Red Hat, with Dell EMC. It's just fascinating, just the level of technical, abilities they have and be able to solve problems at that. So I always have appreciation for that. But I just like science and technology in general. So especially when you get to merge them together. So the folks that are doing, the stuff in biotech and things like that is just fascinating.
Have you heard about how they can take computer programming and sequence it into DNA?
No,
They can. They can synthetically do it with a 3D printer, so they can create DNA based on.
Okay.
And so then the question becomes: Are we just computer programs walking around waiting to be deconstructed into some program? Here, let me give your DNA. You have the perfect program to organize the inventory, if you will.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I imagine that's satisfying a lot of the theorists out there that think we are just a simulation of sorts.
I mean, I guess you could look at that. Then becomes the question is, do you think you have a choice and can change your outcome, or everything's predefined?
Yeah, that's the free will discussion now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is an interesting discussion because I think I tend to be more on the free will compatibilist kind of. I can understand where there's some things that you can't control and we do without our known cognition of it, and then there's obviously things that we do that we know we're doing. So, but then again, I'm just simple technologist trying to fix enterprise problems.
I mean, there's even a genetic marker that will associate with whether or not you're the type of person to move more than 20 miles away from where you grew up.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised about some of that stuff because people do have those inclinations. I mean, that's that's an interesting thought because my wife is Irish, right? But her father was the only person in her family that ever left the farm in Ireland. So they all still live there, and they all live 20 miles away, or I think it's 20 kilometers actually.
Gotta switch units.
From this farm in Ireland, and it's just amazing that that's a lot of that family. But her father was the one out of 6 that decided to come to America, and we were one of the first Americans, for them to meet when we went back. So it was pretty cool.
How many times have you gone back to meet her family?
Just once. So, she actually grew up in London, but
oh wow,
but it moved from Ireland to London, and then came over to the United States when she was a teenager. But we were supposed to go back last year in 2020.
Oh no.
So we're probably going to go back next summer. So that's we're waiting to see how this thing pans out.
The Delta variant,
yes.
The Echo variant. I'm sure we'll keep going until we get to the Omega. At this rate.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully we can get back there and visit. But like I said, I always found that fascinating. Actually, a lot of folks that I grew up with too in Pennsylvania, they stayed very close to where they grew up. But so there's some of us that leave and go explore the world, I guess.
I mean, I also did that. I'm nowhere near where I grew up.
Yeah.
So that's why I guess I brought it up. Not because I was trying to genetically target you for your marker. I'm actually from Detroit, Michigan. You can tell the way that I look.
Right.
Very rugged.
That's a hotbed of engineers because of the automotive industry. So I mean, there's a lot of brilliant engineers and automotive folks there. So I mean, there's a guy I know in Micron who's a PhD and does process engineering and chemist, and I think he grew up outside of Detroit and in Michigan, and his father was in the automotive industry, and it's pretty awesome.
My grandpa, but it has some of the best public schools in the United States, actually.
Yeah, I would imagine so, right?
Even the economy still is kind of not that great yet. It hasn't bounced back.
What I loved about Michigan is that, living in Virginia, there's a lot of folks from Michigan that had moved, I guess, get tired of the weather, the gray skies and the snow, but a lot of them came from farms, and they were just like solid folks. I mean, in terms of being able to do anything. I mean, from, where they're doing computer programming, and then they're also building tables in barns. And I was just like, I was always so impressed and just like almost jealous, like, man, they've so, because, it was just like, they had to do it. They weren't going to buy it. They weren't shipping it from Amazon. They were actually doing it themselves. And it was pretty astounding to see folks like that. And I you see that a lot of Pennsylvania, but also Michigan.
I mean, everyone says like I'm a handy woman because I just like whip out like a tool bag and start fixing things. I love doing DIY projects in the house. Right. And I'm like, I also like programming, but let's paint this wall.
Right. That's I think that's a great characteristic of kind of the down to earth and salt of the earth folks from the Midwest.
Yeah, so. I guess that is a Midwest. Even it's considered Eastern time zone. Yeah. So technically, in some ways, they behave, I guess, like East Coasters. Supposedly, someone said someone at some point.
I see.
Anyway, what is some life advice that you think would stand the test of time, or something that you would want to tell your grandkids that you don't have yet?
I do have a grandkid.
Oh, sorry. That's right. Yeah, you do have. Sorry. What is some life advice you do want to tell your grandkids?
No, or my kids. Yeah, I mean it's a good question. One thing that I realize or I see a lot is this. Don't necessarily get trapped by the pursuit of knowledge in itself. A lot of knowledge is kind of inert, and it's kind of cool to find out a lot of information. Like everybody's a Wikipedia expert, right? All kinds of information about and quoting this and knowing this. But what I would say is focus on methodology and processes and tools to solve problems. Because everything that you and I are doing today will not be done 20 years from now. There's going to be something new, different, totally something we will never be able to anticipate. And you want to be able to be, you want your kids to be able to do that. So not to get hunkered down in one thing and just know it. I mean, it's good. I think it's good to, like you want to learn a foreign language, probably pick up, if you're going to work in technology, pick up some language and understand the structure and framework of programming and understanding syntax and logic and things like that. And then of course, math, but also other things, just, finding patterns in different domains that you can apply when you're trying to solve problems. I think that's something I would tell my kids. And, I'd probably tell them to probably be a little bit more focused than I am and not get bored too easily. But, it's worked to my advantage. I don't know whether it'll work to my father laments. My father was a food scientist and worked for a same company for like 30 years and always gives me grief because, it's like, why are you doing this different? Like, why did you change? And I said, this is the way, I am, and I think it's the way the world is. And
I mean, I think it's a very common thing to not be loyal to one employer anymore for 30 years. That's a very common thing.
Right.
Nowadays.
Exactly.
I honestly can't say I know anyone that has left college and stayed at the same company since college. And I graduated, a little bit more than a decade ago. It's just, that's the way it is. It doesn't pay to be loyal to an employer anymore. Thanks for listening to Sarah in Tech. Feel free to email me at sarah@sarahintech.net or follow me on Instagram at sarahintech. Hope you enjoyed listening.